All right, and we're live. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the World of Grey podcast. In a society divided by black and white arguments, it is my hope with this show that together we can explore the world of grey. My name is the Cougar Meat Kid, Colin Cutler. I am a fitness expert. I am a professional wrestler, and I'm an all-around curious individual that likes to do research on any and all topics that I find interesting or that people challenge me to look up, which has happened quite a bit with this podcast. So today we're going to be talking about the fallout from the US election. If you haven't heard, I'm surprised, but Donald Trump defeated Vice President Kamala Harris to become the president-elect. He will be the 47th president of the United States. He is only the second president to serve in two terms that are not back to back. The last one was in like the 1800s. So pretty historic. And honestly, it wasn't close at all. Trump beat Kamala Harris by more electoral votes than Joe Biden beat Trump in 2020. So the final electoral college votes, electoral votes, was Trump 312, Harris 226, which is crazy. So we're just going over the results of the 2024 US election, which Donald Trump has won. Good morning, sir. So what is our reaction? How do we feel about this? We are filming this show from Canada. We are directly affected by US politics. This is a big reason why I follow it so closely. And friends of mine who are much smarter than me have theorized that with the tariffs that Trump is going to put on a lot of different countries, Canada is not immune to that. There's a chance that we could see a up to 10% loss in GDP. So that's interesting. So what are our thoughts about Donald Trump becoming the next president of the United States? Join the conversation. We're just talking about the results of the presidential election. I was not surprised. I do think that the Democratic Party, not even the Democratic Party, the Democratic base really underestimated the chances of Trump winning this election, and it was not even close. 312 electoral votes to 226. Trump won all the swing states. Now, we can get into why we think Trump won, and he won by a landslide victory. We can get into that in a couple minutes, but I'm just interested to hear everybody's opinion. Do you think this is the end of democracy in the United States? Could this lead to a civil war? Is this going to prevent or cause World War III? There's been people talking about this on both ends. A lot of people thinking that Trump has stopped us from World War III, and a lot of misleading posts going around. I just created a short on our YouTube channel, World of Grey Podcast. So like and subscribe to that channel if you haven't already. But I did a short talking about a lot of these right-wing public figures, and I am putting Joe Rogan in that because, he endorsed Trump and he has slowly shifted more to that side. I know he's a little bit more nuanced in his policy thoughts and his political opinions, but we're going to put him in that category. There's a lot of people sharing this article by Newsweek about Hamas leaders wanting a peaceful end to the war in the Middle East. But if you actually look at what these Hamas leaders were saying, it was basically that now that Trump is president-elect, when he gets in, they want him to stop Israel's aggression on the Palestinian people, especially in Gaza. So it wasn't them saying, we surrender, you win, you get whatever you want. It was them saying, look, now that there's a different administration in here, look at what's happening in Gaza, which a lot of individuals have deemed a genocide from Israel. This needs to stop now. So this got shared out. Even Don Trump Jr., which I understand he's not the brightest individual, or at least not a very honest individual, he was saying within 12 hours of Donald Trump being elected, he's stopped the war in the Middle East. Okay, so yeah, we can get into why we think Donald Trump won, and Chisholm actually has kind of started this saying traditional media is not as powerful, I guess, like as it once was, and I'd agree with that. Donald Trump's kid Barron did a really good job of getting him onto really popular podcast platforms, and there was a lot of young men that weren't voting, and I think a lot of them came out and voted for Donald Trump, hoping for some sort of a change. Dylan Murphy says, I saw a clip of a reporter asking Chrystia Freeland about what she thinks Canadian-U.S. relationship will look like, knowing that Trump is very outspoken and that he does not like Justin Trudeau. Her liberal partner behind her could barely contain her laughter. Yeah, I really don't know what's going to happen with that relationship, but I think just from a pure trade perspective, Trump is going to put some tariffs on Canada, and it will affect our overall GDP. That's what a lot of my friends that are like much smarter than me business wise have told me. So now that the election's over, the blame game on the Democratic Party side has really come out in full force. There was a lot of the mainstream media blaming Joe Biden, for one, for not stepping down earlier. It was actually Nancy Pelosi was blaming Kamala Harris and Joe Biden for Joe Biden not just saying after his first term that he wasn't going to serve a second term and just stepping down and letting them do an open primary for the Democratic Party and having the people actually, in each state cast a vote and vote somebody in. And I think out of all the critiques from mainstream media, that's a really big one. Another one that mainstream media is leaning into really hard is misogyny and racism, which I think is valid, but not as big of a reason as they are making it out to seem. Hey, Diana's here. We're just talking about the results of the US election and why we think Donald Trump won. And I'm going over mainstream media's reasons that I've been seeing lately. And I do agree that America is overwhelmingly sexist and racist in a lot of ways. And I know a lot of people will disagree with that. And that side really struggles with, actually, I'd say both sides. America really struggles with a woman being president. There's actually Kyle Kalinske of Secular Talk. His wife's also a reporter, Crystal Ball, and they do a show together. And they said something really interesting, that a woman will become president, and I think in my lifetime for sure, but it will most likely be a Republican. Like a female Republican who has a lot of charisma and it has conservative values will gain popularity even with the male base of Republicans if she really leans into conservative values. However, I think on the Democratic side, or actually what they were saying, and I agree with, is because Hillary lost in 2016 and Kamala lost in 2024, just in this election cycle, the Democratic Party is going to shift right back to old white, maybe not old white guys, because I know like age was a big issue for Joe Biden, but they're going to go back to white guys, at least for the next few election cycles, trying to rebuild the party's momentum. But look, if we go back to 2016, you had a lot of people that didn't like the way life is and how, I think that's also a big reason Kamala didn't, white dudes, 100%. That's what you're saying. Yeah, for sure. And again, I really think that not having a primary, Carrie Lee is here. How we doing? I think not having a open primary for the people to actually vote somebody to be the nominee for the Democratic Party also hurt them more than they originally thought it would. If you go back to 2016 when Hillary was running, you had a lot of the population really not happy with the cost of living and the way things were. And Hillary comes in, not really campaigning for working class people. And populism starts to become more popular. populism becomes more prevalent and relevant in that election cycle, which Donald Trump really leaned into. What are the really popular things on both sides? I'm just going to say I'm for those things. Republicans want deportation. All right, I'm going to build a wall. The left wants better healthcare. I'm going to talk about how great I'm going to make healthcare. It's going to be way better than Obamacare. And you look at Hillary's campaign, and what did she really campaign on? All I remember seeing is, I'm not Donald Trump. And then you have her, she's a Clinton who, to a lot of the population, is part of this elitist, classist group that doesn't care about working people. She doesn't politic for working people. She doesn't campaign to working people. She just says she's not Trump. And Trump calls her out for having her donors in the audience, kind of makes her look bad. Those emails come out. It's leaked emails. Donald Trump wins. She didn't offer any policy. Not to mention, some people believe that Bernie Sanders won the popular vote during the 2016 primary, but the official electorates in each state just chose Hillary Clinton to be the nominee. And Bernie runs off a very populist left message: universal basic income, free tuition for college students, a whole bunch of other social programs, drug costs coming down, part of Medicare for all. These things that, when they poll Americans on policy, 70% and or more Americans agree and support a Bernie Sanders platform when you take the personality out of it, the person out of it. Because the scare tactic with a Bernie Sanders is they're never going to win in a presidential race because they don't cater to or speak to moderates. And that's, in my opinion, more of a scare tactic. I think if he was up against, Donald Trump in 2020 during a pandemic, he would have won and he'd still be president now, because he would enact all these social programs that work for everybody, do it in a way that doesn't really affect people's taxes. Because right now America is spending so much money on the military, and there's so much money being wasted that you could just put that money to the things that actually matter to people, and Bernie gets voted in a second term. So you have all this establishment Democratic Party trying to push out populist politicians like a Bernie Sanders. So now, what do you expect is going to happen? You're going to get enough people that are apathetic enough to go, well, it's not the stuff I want, but I guess it's better than, it's the lesser of two evils. Well, no, those people are just going to stay home. They're not going to come out to vote. And historically, when people don't come out to vote, favors Republicans. And, Kamala did some other weird stuff during the election. Also, the campaign kind of wavered up and down of what message. They started really leaning into Donald Trump is weird, and then they backed off from it because the Biden administration said it wasn't a good look for the party. Then their poll numbers started dropping because people liked that they were calling out Trump and MAGA for being weird. And then, they stopped, they went down, and oh crap. So then they stumble and rush to get back to that rhetoric. And then Donald Trump did a lot of smart things. I think he ran a worse campaign than he did in 2016, but he still did some smart things. He went on podcasts to appeal to younger voters. He got Joe Rogan to endorse him last minute, who has a huge platform. He also had some blunders for sure, like having Tony Hinchcliffe on saying that Puerto Rico is a big floating island of garbage was probably not a great idea. He did then just deny it. But I think this vote specifically, in every developed country except for one, and I can't remember which country it is, but the elections post-pandemic, which this is it. This is the election post-pandemic for the United States. All the incumbents, so the sitting leaders, presidents or prime ministers, whatever, they all lost. Maybe it's Trudeau, right? Because Trudeau's still here. Has there been an election for? No, we haven't had a federal election since the pandemic. So every single incumbent lost. And yeah, look, Kamala wasn't the president at the time, but she was in the administration and she took over for Biden, who like dropped out of the race, and then the people didn't get a Democratic vote. So I think this was just a big fuck you to the Democratic Party, because you can talk about how inflation is now coming down, how like wages haven't come, but you can talk about how the economy is getting better by all these metrics. But if the American people aren't seeing the prices go down or the money in their bank account, they don't care about that. So they're still going to blame the incumbents. And I really think that's what it was. Tony, thank you for joining. We're just talking about why Donald Trump got elected to be president this election cycle. Usually in politics, it's about the lesser of two evils, and everyone just urges over who and what that is. Oh, argues, sorry. Yes, I 100% agree. And this is just history. Most of the time we just waffle back and forth. Is government gets in, they promise all these things, they do very little. And if they do too few of things, then the population just gets mad and votes in the other person. Maybe they'll do better, and we just play ping pong and we make these little tiny interim progresses forward, or somebody comes in and it just goes back. Like America had Roe v. Wade as a precedent for like 4 decades, I think. And then Trump just gets rid of it and we're right back to where we started. And now the next liberal party that gets in is going to have to fight to, be pro-choice and have women have the right to choose, right? There is a conspiracy about Kamala's famous supporters being on the Diddy list, and then she had Jennifer Lopez do some big speech with rumors of their past. People say it online doesn't look good. Oh, I see. Yeah. Talking about Jennifer Lopez, there's a lot of suspicion that Jennifer Lopez knew a lot of stuff that was happening with Diddy and just didn't say anything. Yeah, and here's the other thing too is, during this election cycle, so Diana has a really good point here. There's a reporter that had a sit-down conversation with Jeffrey Epstein, which is there's a recording of it, saying that he had pictures of Donald Trump with topless young girls on his lap, and it still didn't affect Donald Trump's ability to win the race. So there was a bit of a double standard here, where if Democrats said anything, their feet got held to the fire by both sides, because Democrats didn't like, that side being super, well, I guess when they called Donald Trump weird and stuff, they were okay with that. But if they said any insults to the American people or they misstepped, they were really shot down by both sides. But when Trump said the most outrageous stuff, like they're eating the dogs, they're eating the cats, it's, we made fun of him, but it's just Donald Trump. Like, he says crazy shit. And a lot of the right-wing pundits and journalists were like, well, that's not really what he means. He speaks in hyperbole, and he would just get this pass. One of the big ones was Piers Morgan getting mad at any lefty for saying Trump is fascist. And if you look at the definition of fascist, but you're calling him Hitler and how dare you and blah, blah, blah. Trump called Harris a commie from day one. He was calling her a communist every single rally. Like, holy double standard. Piers Morgan is a piece. I've been watching a lot of Piers Morgan this election cycle, and man, he is a hack now. I'm sure one is coming for us, maybe 2025 in Canada. Yeah, the last polling I looked at for a federal election, Conservatives are way ahead. So everyone's done with Justin Trudeau, which I understand. So yeah, so personally, I think Trump won because people are just fed up. And it was just a big fuck you. And Trump's really good at getting people to believe bullshit. And a lot of people that voted for him are never going to fact check him. And even if you did fact check him, they'd be like, it doesn't matter, I still like him. And hey, I give it to him, dude's got charisma. If you don't actually know for a fact that the stuff he's saying is bullshit, which, I can fact check him without actually Googling now, the stuff he's saying, it couldn't in your brain make sense. Yeah, and I believe there was close to 20 million less votes this election cycle than the last one. Apathy, man. I know I sound very privileged, but I'm not voting anymore in political elections. Look, I get it. And I actually really don't agree with anybody that's like, how dare you not vote, blah, blah, blah. It's like, look, when you give me a candidate that's worth voting for, I did vote in this last provincial election, but I don't disagree with people protesting. But yeah, you got to earn people's votes. And a lot of times they're not good options. There's option 1 and option 2, and they both can suck. So if you don't want to vote out of protest, don't. Hey, Bernie does it in the Senate. He'll protest. There's some amazing pictures of everyone voting for something and Bernie just sitting on a bench with his arms crossed. It's amazing. I think it was for the military budget to be increased. Even Elizabeth Warren voted for it. I think so did AOC, Alexandria Cortez. What's the middle name? I'm actually a big fan of her. And I think there's other things in the bill that they were voting for to get through. But Bernie's got a history of protesting these things that he doesn't agree with. Bernie Sanders released a statement on November 6th, so the day after the election. And I do encourage you to read the whole thing, but looking at a tweet that went out from Bernie Sanders, just kind of summarizes, it should come as no great surprise that a Democratic Party which has abandoned working class people would find that the working class has abandoned them. While the Democratic leadership defends the status quo, the American people are angry and want change. Simple, to the point, and just so powerful. And this is why I've been such a Bernie fan for so long, is just the unwavering support for the middle class. I want to actually talk about what are the good things that can happen with Donald Trump being president. So what do you think, or what have you heard? Maybe you don't believe Trump's going to do any good things, but maybe other people you know have argued that point, or he's argued that point. I think for me personally, I'm just done with a lot of societal mentalities and man-made constructs. I've become selfish and only care about working on myself in my life. At this point, that's a lot of apathy. But you're not alone. A lot of people feel that way, and I feel like the older we get, the more we start to close off, in a sense that we start to really worry more about our families, which I think is natural, and start to realize that there's really very little we can do. On the other side of that, though, I think having that mentality, and that mentality being so common, is part of the reason why we don't see change. I also like the mentality of first work on yourself, take care of yourself, take care of your family, and then try to support and better your community. And if everybody in the world tries to do those three things, then we can see some real change in the world, because that's attainable. This was the Bud Light election. I don't know what that means, but if it means it wasn't like that intense, I thoroughly disagree. Yeah, so Carolee, thanks. So Donald Trump most likely is going to be giving RFK, who was running for president as an independent and is more of a libertarian, which does lean right, in charge of, I guess, healthcare. I'm not 100% sure, but RFK is a big believer that we need to ban certain chemicals for certain foods, which makes sense. There are chemicals in food in America that are banned in other countries, and I think if other countries are banning certain ingredients being in food, that, America should also. And not doing that just means that you're, getting money from some sort of special interest. So that could be really good. On the other side of that, RFK is also a vaccine denier and has said that there are no safe vaccines out there. currently. So having somebody that has anti-science rhetoric making decisions on health protocols, I think is shaky at best. Exposing big pharma. Yeah, so I mean, if RFK can get drug prices down, because whatever exposing big pharma, like, I don't know what that means. Everybody exposes big pharma. There's a lot of documentaries on big pharma, and people have definitely exposed them and their corruption. I think if he can do something to create collective bargaining with drug companies, I think that could go a long way. I think that's America in a lot of ways. Their healthcare system has some of the best technology, but it has some of the worst outcomes because people can't afford good healthcare. A lot of people can't afford good healthcare. And with a third party deciding what's covered and what's not, there's a lot of people that end up dying because they can't get the surgeries or the medications that they need. And again, if Bernie was in, Medicare for all would have solved all these things. Carrie, so good to have you. We're talking about what are the good things Trump and his future team can do for America. I'm back, you're back. Welcome back. All right, our little community's coming back here. Trump's also saying that he wants to sign an executive order to improve free speech in America, giving more ability for everyone to have their voice be heard and limiting government from censoring individuals that they may not want bringing a certain topic or something that's happening in government to the forefront is actually a really good idea, or is a really good ideology to have. And not allowing them to use misinformation or disinformation as a blanketed term to then censor people also makes sense. It's like how after 9/11, they just said terrorists for everything, and then they brought in the Patriot Act, and they could do mass surveillance on the American people under the guise of terrorism. Here's my issue with it. Where do we draw the line for propaganda? And if government is not allowed to have any say on who gets censored, who does? And who bans who? So are you just shifting all of the power to the owners of these platforms? And by owners of platforms, I mean Elon Musk, who says he's about free speech and then bans journalists who criticize him and gets 80 of his engineers to rewrite the algorithm so his stuff is like 100 times more likely to end up on your feed. So I'm really interested to see where this goes and what is actually in these executive orders. So if this happens, I will find these executive orders if they are public knowledge, and I will do a deep dive into them. So the world of gray here, free speech for all, great idea. Free speech for everyone except the people that criticize the people in power, not good. And historically, fear-mongering works really well to pretend like you're for a thing when you're actually taking it away. Saying you're for freedom when you're actually taking it away. Saying you're for free speech when you're actually taking it away. Free speech should be unlimited free speech as long as it doesn't harm human beings. And I don't disagree that sometimes people would get censored when they shouldn't have. But let's also remember that when Twitter was bought, it was bought under the assumption, or not the assumption, but it was bought because Elon Musk was saying that Twitter was biased to left-wing media. But like a year before that, there was a study that was done that went through the data of Twitter, and had released an article saying, yes, there is a bias in the algorithm, but it's biased towards right-wing news. Within 7 countries, 6 out of the 7 leaned left by the algorithm. Leaned right. The only one that leaned left was Germany. Oh yeah. So Dylan's talking about her body, my choice. Yeah, so here's the other thing too, is Elon Musk has shared a lot of crazy misinformation. There was a video I just watched yesterday. I forget what the YouTube channel was called. It was really late in the night. And it was a great summary of Elon Musk's slowly getting into politics and kind of why. It was insane. But yeah, so there's a couple things that came out as soon as Trump was elected. Yeah, this her body, my choice, which is so disgusting because it just sounds like you now think you have the right to do whatever with someone's body, and it almost is like you're inciting like rape or something. Like her body, my choice. What are you talking about? I mean, look, whether or not that should be banned, that's a whole long conversation. But the fact that individuals that have the megaphone, so have a following, now feel like it's their right to talk like that, although maybe we shouldn't silence the voices, we should be sad, ashamed, embarrassed of where our society has been led to. Because anybody that thinks that that's okay is so the opposite of my ideology that it makes me sad that I live in a world that exists, that has that content that exists. Algorithms, yeah. So Diana's asking, aren't algorithms very personalized? 100% they are. However, if you own the social media company and you can get engineers to rewrite an algorithm to specifically put your stuff in front of more people, it's not as personalized anymore. And also remember, Elon Musk gave, I think, $118 million to this campaign. He did a lottery to get people to sign a petition saying they would vote for Donald Trump. A lot of lawyers are saying that's election interference, but it was so late in the game, you can't do anything about it. He's now elected president. So, is it free speech? And also, we go back to the Constitution when it comes to free speech. So everyone should be allowed to say what they want. However, there's no computers when the Constitution was written. There was no ability for mass propaganda to brainwash a huge subsection of the country into thinking they're voting someone in that's going to do all these amazing things that he's never going to do, that he believes in things that he does not believe in, that he cares about you and he absolutely does not. I think the gray area that I struggle with is, because my algorithm is biased, is Trump being president for the next 4 years as apocalyptic as they make it sound? Maybe not. Does Trump have the potential to change the Constitution so he can run for president again? Absolutely. And if you think no one would ever do that, Putin's done it. I think 5 times he's rewritten the Constitution. That could be totally wrong. But he rewrote the Constitution so he could keep running as president. So if the ego's there, it can happen. And Trump's a lot smarter, this time around, he's a lot smarter with the campaign. He's going to be a lot smarter with who he puts in these positions in his cabinet and in his administration, because before he took a bunch of already established politicians that called him and said, hey, we want this job. He said, yeah, sure. And then they would push back and he's like, fuck, I don't like that. Saying that he needed the generals that Hitler had because they were so loyal. So this time he's just going to bring in a bunch of yes men. Then we'll see what he's going to do. If you want free speech, you must be willing to put up with hate speech. Yeah, that's totally an argument. It's an easy concept. I agree, but then you also can't be a hypocrite and ban journalists for criticizing you. Maybe the word should be devious rather than smarter. Like Trump is devious? That's true. Yeah, and Dylan and Chisholm really just kind of going back and forth on the free speech and needing to deal with hate speech. I agree. I 100% agree. I think where I think the line is crossed is when you're manipulating the natural flow of like an algorithm or who gets banned because you have the power. That becomes very totalitarian. And especially in like an election cycle where people really are on the fence and need information, and Musk is just pumping out like thousands of tweets that are pro-Trump and giving away money. So what's the end goal? The last thing I want to talk about is Elon Musk. So what do you all think about Elon Musk? Could this be good for society? Could it be good for the United States? Or could he have an agenda that is detrimental to society moving forward? So here's my thoughts on Elon Musk. He's really good at pushing the envelope of technology and human evolution, and I mean that by a technological aspect. He's really pushing innovation. I think he has a very specific agenda that he wants to strong arm through, but I'm not yet sure if the end result of that is good or bad for the world. And even if he thinks he's doing good, could it be potentially harmful? What I do know is that he is a hypocrite when it comes to free speech. He is kind of trolling America, talking about the Department of Government Efficiency, which is Doge, which is a joke cryptocurrency that he bought. So interesting, or created. He's made a ton of money since Trump has won the election. So he's already got a massive return on investment for his $118 million that he's put through. He is very aggressive to the people that he wants to be pushing his agenda forward. So there's a lot of Tesla employees that have stated that. He doesn't like when people disagree with him, for sure. And he is going to be put in charge of the very government agencies that are auditing his company for safety issues. So he is going to be regulating the regulators that are regulating his companies. Let me say that again because I stumbled a little bit. Elon Musk will be regulating the regulators who are regulating his companies. If you can explain to me how that's not a conflict of interest and or corruption, I would love to hear the explanation. And then, yeah, Dylan talking about chips in your brain. Yeah, that's tough too, though, because, you know, if you can download stuff in your brain, it could be really good. Most things are never all good or all bad, hence World of Gray. Thank you so much for tying that in a little bow. There's my sister, very smart individual. Very philosophical, and I love how her brain works. Yeah, 100%. I don't think it's all good or all bad, and I think Trump can do good. Trump has done good things in his last administration. I mean, he probably didn't come up with them; he just signed them. He's like, yeah, sure, that sounds good. As long as it doesn't affect his overall brand and his power, he will do good things. And I don't think he wants to purposely do harm or purposely do good. I think he just wants to improve the Trump brand, and if there's casualties of that, oh well. Thank you for joining me if you're watching this video on YouTube. Thank you for watching this video. If you watched all the way to the end and you haven't already, please like and subscribe on this channel. It would be greatly appreciated. We're trying to grow our audience, really make a run at this thing this time. There will be lots of content being produced, more and more as we really get going. All right, everyone, take care of yourself. And, you know, in a society divided by black and white arguments, we are here to explore the world of gray. Thanks for joining me. Be good to each other.